I heard this story from my friend around 15 years ago. When he was in elementary school, he was playing alone on a mountain behind his house. But as he looked down from the top, suddenly he saw not just his house, but another on the other side of the mountain that looked exactly the same. I don't know which house is mine, he thought when he was done playing. I know that friend's house well. The other side of the mountain is just forest. There's no space there for other buildings, let alone another house. Even supposing that my friend is really from another world, he's still my friend, so I don't care. But at any rate, this is what he told me one time. Hey guys, I'm your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kawabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. If you're looking for more to listen to once you're done with this episode, I've been recording various audiobooks that you can now find on our Patreon, Fourth Wall Store, and various audiobook outlets, including Spotify. I'm adding more all the time, so if you need another hit of Japanese horror, head over to patreon.com/Tara A. Devlin, the Kawabana Fourth Wall shop, or your favourite online store to pick some up right now. This week, we're travelling to another world. Or several worlds, maybe, as we look at stories of people who found themselves in areas that don't seem to exist in our world as we know it. First up, a young man heads out one morning to buy some cigarettes, ignoring a rather odd warning from his father. An act he soon regrets. But why? Find out in Family Rule. This happened 5 or 6 years ago, I think. Autumn had passed, so I guess it was around December or so. Because I went to bed early the night before, I woke up rather early the next day. I think it was right before sunrise, but my head was still foggy and half asleep. Anyway, I wanted a cigarette, but I didn't have any. I really wanted one for some reason, and as annoying as it was, I got out of bed to go buy some. I glanced at the living room, and my dad was already awake. He was eating as he read the newspaper. "I'm gonna grab some smokes," I said, and as I was putting on my shoes, I heard him reply. But it sounded muffled, and all I could make out was "today" and "be careful." It was like some kind of weird noise was blocking him, almost like words that weren't really words were squished in between what he was saying. Plus, he was the type of guy who usually just grunted or whatever in reply, so him talking that much was weird to begin with. At any rate, I didn't think much of it at the time and just said, "Yeah, alright," as I left the house. My head still felt sleepy, and as I walked to the vending machine, I thought about how cold it was, and how beautiful the sunrise was, and so on. And even though I was still half asleep, I still said "good morning" to an old guy who was cleaning as I passed. "Oh," he muttered, sounding just like my father. Again, all I managed to make out was "morning." But still, I didn't pay much attention and soon reached the vending machine. I grabbed some Akamaru. I immediately took one out so I could smoke it on the way home, and the moment I lit it up, it was like the fog in my head cleared. But at the same time, I realized things around me were rather odd. First, there was supposed to be just one tobacco vending machine and 2 for drinks. But instead, there were 2 for tobacco and 2 for drinks, making 4 in total. Did they put in another one yesterday? I wondered. But looking at this new one, I couldn't read the printed characters. Plus, there was no space to put in coins or notes. The drink machines were the same, and they looked almost like marble, but rusted. Second, I had just been thinking about how beautiful the sunrise looked, and now it looked almost like a dark purple, and it was far from beautiful. Huh? Eh? What the hell? I started to panic. And then I realized that all the nearby houses had their lights on as well. For a moment, I wondered if it was actually evening, but when I checked my phone, it was definitely morning. And for some reason, my phone had no signal too. I decided that I should just head home for now and turn to go back the way I came. But no matter how far I walked, I didn't recognize any of the scenery around me. The old guy who was cleaning was also gone, and there was this strange, raw smell in the air as well. I was beyond confused. I couldn't find my house, and everything looked different. And as I stood there, dumbfounded, suddenly I saw someone was standing right in front of me. Thinking it might be the old cleaning guy, I looked up to see his face, but his face wasn't there. Instead, it was something flat and blank, like a stomach or chest, and when I looked even further up, I finally saw his face. I don't know how to describe it. It was kind of like a kindergarten kid had mixed together 3 or 4 clay faces. Unable to grasp what was going on, my mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He again mumbled something, and I thought I could make out "not" and "here." But next thing I knew, it felt like something smashed the side of my head. The impact and pain was so much that I thought, strangely, calmly, that I was dead, before everything went black. The last thing I saw was that thing dragging me, holding my leg that was bent in a strange direction. When I came back to, that old cleaning guy was right in front of me. "Huh? Didn't you just pass by?" "What?" he said. There was nothing wrong with my body, and my leg wasn't bent either. Looking around, it was the familiar scenery of my neighborhood. When I got home, my face pale, my father was still there, even though he was usually at work at this time. "I told you to be careful, didn't I?" he said as soon as he saw my face. "It's purple today." "What? Do you know about this?" I asked. He said he was going to be late for work, however, so he'd tell me about it when he got back. When he got home that night, this is what he told me. Our family has a rule not to go outside when the sunrise is purple. When my father was younger and got his license, he went for a drive before sunrise one day and suddenly found himself lost in a strange place. Apparently, when he got back, it was just after sunrise. And it seemed that today was going to be purple, so he shifted his job back a bit so he could see how things were going to play out. That was why he told me to be careful as well. And that's what happened. But if my dad knew all of that was going to happen, then he should have stopped me before I went out. The man in this next story finds himself on a weirdly empty train on his way to work. When the train stops, he finds himself in an area he's never seen before, and now his phone isn't working either. But that's not even the worst part. Find out why in I'll Put You Here Instead. People often write here about traveling through time and space, or ending up in a different world, but I've also had such an experience. Which is to say, I'm still having it. 2 years ago, on July 28th, I was in Osaka. It was a gloomy Monday, and I wasn't even able to get any time off to go home. As soon as I woke up, I was annoyed. But as I was on the train from Kongo Station in Sayama, heading to Tengachaya, something strange happened. I was so into the game I was playing on my phone. It was a little weird. I was focused on it, of course, but the normally noisy train car was really quiet. Usually it would be packed, with people bumping into each other. But it felt oddly empty, and when I looked up, I saw I was the only one there. It was the morning rush hour on the Nankai line, so there was just no way. And next thing I knew, I realized the train had stopped and the doors were open. We had definitely stopped at a station, but I couldn't read the name. I could see characters I knew, but I couldn't remember how on earth to read them. And as I tried to remember them, I just as quickly forgot. After debating what to do, I got off the train and made my way outside. As I left the station, my surroundings looked like the normal downtown Osaka area, but I didn't know this town. I never knew this place was here, I thought. But at any rate, I decided to call work. I had to tell them the train had stopped and wasn't moving. And although I was trying to figure out what was going on, there were no announcements, and I couldn't see any staff either. But my phone was out of service, and I couldn't find a public phone either. There was a small store that looked like a cheap restaurant, so I went inside to ask if I could use their phone. But nobody was there. At that point, I suddenly remembered the mirror world from the movie version of Doraemon. At any rate, I went back to the station and jumped over the ticket gate. It wasn't working, and tried to get back on the train. When I reached the platform, I saw one other person there. It's a little hard to describe, but he kind of looked like a middle-aged gentleman wearing a thick coat. Ah, I thought, and went to call out to him, but he started speaking first. Although, strictly speaking, it wasn't like his mouth was moving or sound was coming out of it, but rather I could just hear him directly inside my ears. "I can't send you back, so I'll put you here instead," he said. What the hell is he talking about? I thought. But then suddenly it was like explosions went off right in front of my eyes. I quickly closed them, and when I opened them again, I was at work. It was 9:02 a.m., and it appeared that I wasn't late. Normally I would only just make it in time, no matter how fast I ran. But I wasn't even out of breath. Huh? Something wasn't right. I wasn't me. I went to the toilets to look in the mirror, and it was me looking back, but it also wasn't me. The impression of my eyes and my hair and such, not younger or older, but like a stranger who looked just like me. And everyone at work was the same, like they were just slightly different. I ended up quitting that job, and now I work back in my hometown, but even my parents are slightly different to what I remember. It's not that they've aged or anything, but everything feels oddly different. It's not like I've experienced any troubles and my life is happy and even peaceful. But everything is different to the previous world I was in. And I'm still here. Two young girls decide to head out and explore their mother's old school as they go to stay with their grandparents during the summer. But is it actually their mother's old school that they find, or something else entirely? Find out in My Mother's School. During the summer holidays around 10 years ago, I went to visit my mother's parents' house with her and my sister, who was 1 year older than me. Their house was located at the foot of a mountain, a short distance from the nearby village, and about 5 minutes on foot from the closest neighbours. At the time, my sister and I really loved scary ghost stories set in schools, and so we secretly planned to visit our mother's old school to explore it. We had gone near that school before with our grandmother to pick royal ferns, so we decided to take the same mountain path there again. There was a road leading there, but if you took the mountain path, it was about a 1-hour round trip. The area was losing more and more people, and by that point it was mostly just the elderly still left, so the mountain was wild and unkept. Weeds and grass grew like crazy, and there were stone monuments that looked like tombstones, as well as a small shrine and shrine gate, but these hadn't been looked after for a long, long time either. We proceeded safely up the path, and the school was about halfway up the mountain. The rear of this one-story school faced the road, and there was a small ground to the front of it. Beyond that was the mountain slope, and down below you could see a village and rice fields and such. My sister and I chatted about how the kids down there must attend this school and how some of our mother's classmates at the time probably lived there too, as we left the path and walked onto the road. But then I realised something odd. I remembered there being a paved road next to the school, but now there was nothing. Something didn't feel right, and suddenly I grew afraid. "Hey, sis, don't you think this is weird?" I asked. But she said I was just imagining things and ignored me. We walked through the school gate and then entered the school grounds. The grounds were maintained rather well, contrary to my expectations, and so we decided to take a lap around them to check everything out. Roughly a quarter of the way around, we could see through the windows to the rooms inside the building. It seemed children were sitting in chairs and taking class. All the girls had short bobbed hair, and all the boys had shaved heads. "Hey, we should go back now," I said, suddenly feeling scared. "It's probably just some village event," my sister said, unconcerned. "Maybe we can get some candy if we go over." After we'd finished walking around the school grounds, we decided to look inside the building, but I was still scared and tried desperately to convince my sister to head back. By this point, she also seemed to be a little nervous, and after some prodding, she reluctantly gave in and we started back. It felt like 2 hours or so had passed since we left our grandparents' house, but when we got back, it seemed we had only been gone for half an hour. We ran straight to our mother to ask her about what happened. Was the path by her old school paved? Did the village use that building for local events? She seemed to sense something was wrong, so she asked us to tell her in detail what exactly we saw. I told her how we took the mountain path to check out her old school, how the path next to it wasn't paved, about the village and rice fields at the bottom of the mountain, and the kids inside the building with their weird hairstyles. The whole time, my sister read some comics that our uncle left behind. My mother's answer was more shocking than I expected. She said that path was paved when she was a child, but there was no village down below. It was simply plain fields. And nobody used the school for local events. And while there were often boys with shaved heads, very rarely did girls have bobbed hair. And not only that, but her school was 2 stories, not 1. Neither of us could understand what was going on, so we went to Grandpa to talk to him about it. He stood up and grabbed an old photo album. "Is this what you saw?" he asked, pointing to an old black and white photo of a school building. It was the same one we saw. Grandpa then told us a story from his younger days. Long ago, there used to be a village in that area, and he also attended school from down there. He always used to play with his village friends on the mountain and by the river, and it was pretty fun. But then, when the war broke out, he and his friends had to join. Both the school and the village were burnt down during the war, and most of his friends also died during it. Because he was one of the few who returned home safely, our mother was able to be born. And because several decades had passed since then, most of his friends from that time had already passed away. Tears formed in his eyes as he spoke, but then he smiled at me. Those kids you saw, some of them were probably my friends. I wish I could have seen them too. Yesterday, my grandfather passed away as well. A cosplayer out at an event has to say goodbye to her friends as they head off to enjoy a concert together. But, before long, she finds herself even more alone than that. Where has everyone else at the venue gone to? Find out in Green Sky. This story is a real experience that I actually had. I'm a cosplayer, and one day I went to an event with 3 of my friends. The venue had both an indoor and outdoor area we could use, but because it was really cold that day, we spent most of our time inside taking photos. Shortly after noon, the 4 of us visited reception to ask where we could eat lunch. Seemed food and drinks were forbidden inside, so we had to go to the terrace outside if we wanted to eat. It was ridiculously cold, but we didn't have much choice, so we put our coats on and went outside. But as we were enjoying our lunch, something happened. The other 3 people I was with had plans to go to a large Vocaloid concert that same day, so they finished eating quickly. I had gotten used to the cold by that point, so I sat on the terrace alone as I drank some juice and watched the other cosplayers. A few minutes passed, and then it hit me. Oh yeah, I should look at the photos I took today. I thought I could kill a bit of time that way, so I pulled out my camera and started going through the photos. Not even 5 minutes had passed when suddenly I realized, however, that things were very, very quiet. Maybe because it was so cold that day, there were few people at the event to begin with. But even so, it was still way too quiet. Next thing I knew, all the cosplayers taking photos had disappeared. I thought that maybe they went back inside because it was too cold, or maybe some staff had directed them back inside. But as I stood up to return myself, I looked up and was so shocked that I felt dizzy. The sky was green. All of it, including the clouds. There was no gradation or anything. It was all bright green. I rubbed my eyes, thinking there was something wrong with them, but the sky was still just green. I was in a courtyard with 4 walls around me, and the lights and sunlight that reflected off the ground were all green as well. It was honestly creepy. It was so unnatural that I forgot I was even at an event and burst into tears as I tried to make my way back to reception. But nobody was there. The sets they had put up for photos that had been so packed before were now empty shells. The chairs full of people were now also empty, and I was so scared that I froze on the spot. I started panicking. How was something like this even possible? I ran to the hall to find the staff room, and there I saw a woman wearing a white cardigan, blue blouse, and jeans with a folded hem. I think she was also wearing some sort of yellow armband on her right wrist or arm. There was a shape like a captain's mark or maybe some sort of character, but I couldn't read it. She also had a black sun visor on, so I couldn't see her face very well. At any rate, she was another person, so still in my costume, I went over to talk to her. "Excuse me, but do you know what's going on here?" I asked. Suddenly, the woman realized I was there and all the color seemed to drain from her face. "What's wrong? Why are you here?" At that point, I panicked, thinking that maybe I had surprised her because I was still in costume. "I came for a cosplay event, but it seems like everyone suddenly disappeared. I can't find anyone. Are you also lost?" "Hold on. This might take a moment, so please sit down." It didn't feel like we were having the same conversation. She smiled gently, looking like a kindergarten teacher, and as I sat on a nearby sofa, she pulled her phone out to talk to someone. I heard her say some weird stuff like, "Another victim. This is the 6th one this year." When she was done, the woman smiled and turned to me. "You must have been so scared," she said as she closed her phone. As soon as she put her hand on my shoulder, suddenly it was like there was a snap or an explosion, like fireworks. And when I came back to, I was sitting on the same terrace as before. "My friends," I thought, and went to find them. They were all taking group photos together. What on earth just happened? I thought. It felt too real to be a dream, and as we made our way home, I told my friends about the very strange experience I'd just had. A couple agree to meet at their usual meeting spot, but when they get there, they quickly realize something isn't right. They can't see each other. What's going on? Find out in Meeting Place. I always troubled my girlfriend by showing up to our agreed meeting places late, so this time I got there 10 minutes earlier than usual. But our agreed meeting time came and went with no sign of her. Then another 10 minutes passed. Still no sign of her. Growing worried, I called her. "Where are you?" I asked, my voice full of both worry and annoyance. "I'm waiting by the bench," she said, mentioning our agreed meeting place. "What are you talking about? I'm there too." We agreed to meet by a bench in an area that honestly wasn't that large. We always met here. I hadn't mistaken the place. I told her I was already there and waiting as well, but she didn't believe me. "A person on a bicycle just passed me," she said after a pause. "Can you tell me what gender they are and what they're wearing?" I saw the same person, so I described them as I saw them. Neither of us could understand what was going on. We both sent each other a picture of the spot we were standing on, and when I looked at it, I was speechless. The sky, the clouds, even the clock were all taken from almost the exact same angle. We even moved to another location, but still, I couldn't see her. Nothing made any sense, and growing increasingly creeped out, we both agreed to go home for the day. That night, my girlfriend called me and we chatted until morning. Then, the next day, we went back to that same meeting place. When we saw each other, we both almost broke down in tears. I wonder, which of us was it who went to a different world? A young boy believes that if he goes around to the rear of the TV, he can enter the TV world. And when he tries it one time, it seems that idea may have been right. Find out in Inside the TV. When I was just a kid, there was a period where I thought you could enter the world of the TV from behind it. One time, I went around to the back of the TV and opened the sliding doors there. The house we lived in at the time had sliding doors behind the TV. These doors led to my grandmother's room, but because she had a chest of drawers blocking the way, we put the TV on the other side. However, on the other side of the sliding doors, I didn't see my grandmother's room, but rather some kind of studio. Believing that the area behind the TV was connected to it, happily I went inside. But something seemed off. This studio set looked just like one I often saw on TV, but the stairs to the rear led directly to the sky above for some reason. They went so high that the cars on the road below looked like grains of rice. Excited, I went further in. But once I got near the stairs, naturally, I started to feel a little afraid from being so high up, and I approached more cautiously. And what do you know? I slipped, almost falling outside. I honestly thought I was about to die. But I managed to hold onto the stairs somehow, and then I ran right back home. Once I got back, I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone about what happened. Well, I did experience something terrifying, so maybe that wasn't so weird. I tried looking behind the TV again after that, but I never had the same experience ever again. And, in case you're wondering, some relatives of ours still live in that house. We moved out about 10 years ago. And that TV is pretty old now, but still going as strong as ever. A father takes on a volunteer role at his son's school, playing a ghost in their haunted house attraction. But who's the one really being haunted here? Find out in Test of Courage Volunteer. I don't know whether this is scary or not, but it did actually happen to me. At my son's school, there's an event where the 6th graders camp on the school grounds during the summer holidays. During this time, the kids' fathers and older brothers have to volunteer to help everything run smoothly. I had to work during the day, so I was unable to help then. And so instead, I decided to volunteer to play a ghost during the kids' test of courage, as that seemed rather fun. We didn't need to hold a meeting or anything the day beforehand, and on the day, I went to the specified meeting location that was printed on the handout. There, a staff member explained where we would all go, and I was told to hide in the art room on the 4th floor. I changed into my wife's white dress that I brought with me, and put on a wig so I looked like Sadako. Once I was ready, I waited for the kids to come, full of excitement. The plan was to start in 10 minutes, but it would still take them a bit of time to reach me, so in the meantime, I took my phone out to play some games while I waited. However, I discovered the battery was dead. I was a little surprised, but it was an old phone, and I didn't charge it that morning, so I figured it was just my own fault and put it away. I waited quietly for the kids to arrive. Before long, I heard the sounds of their screams. At first, I was surprised, but then that quickly changed to nervous excitement. I imagined what was happening in my head as I heard their screams and laughter getting closer. On that note, my role was to jump up against the frosted glass and make a loud noise to scare them. I didn't know what the best timing would be to do this, but before long, the first group arrived. I waited, and then right as they were about to pass, I pressed myself against the window with a loud bang. Ah! Eh? What was that? That wasn't exactly the reaction I was hoping for. Seemed my timing wasn't the best. I was determined to get it better next time, but the second and third groups also gave only vague reactions. Being a ghost is actually kinda hard, I thought, but I kept trying with each subsequent group. There were only a few groups left by that point, and I still wasn't having the success I wanted. I decided that this time, I'd open the window and scare them directly. The next group approached. Right as they were passing by the window, I slammed the window open and screamed, more like Frankenstein's monster than Sadako, trying to make up for all my previous failures. But nobody was there. Huh? What the hell? Was I seeing things? I stuck my head out and looked around, but the long hall was empty as well. The stairs were a decent distance away, so it didn't seem likely that they already went down those either. Creeped out, I decided to head back to the first meeting point. Nervous, I went down to the first floor, but nobody was there either. Even if all the other volunteers had already gone, the staff running the test of courage and the people from the campfire group who were supposed to help should have at least been there. By that point, I was honestly afraid. "Excuse me, is anyone there?" I screamed. The door to one of the classrooms down the end of the hall then flung open, and somebody screamed, "Shut up!" The figure looked human, but also didn't seem human at all. I let out a strange scream and then ran for my bike outside as fast as I could. After that, I went straight home. I was still dressed like Sadako, but I didn't care. Everyone looked at me in surprise as I rode past, but I really didn't care. And when I got home and heard my wife scream in surprise, for the first time I felt safe, and, embarrassingly, I started crying. My wife did too. At any rate, I took my wig off and explained what had just happened to my wife. Then my phone rang. It was the school, and they wanted to know why I wasn't at the test of courage like I was supposed to be. I apologized and told them I was at home. I'd return the next day to explain to them, I said, and then I hung up. I didn't want them to think I ran away in fear, and I wasn't calm enough at the time to explain it over the phone. That night, I asked my wife to stay with me, even when I went to the toilet and bathroom. On that note, as I was finally starting to doze off, I suddenly realized that my phone was working. And then I couldn't sleep after that. I didn't think they'd believe me, but the next day I went in and explained what happened. They'd probably think I was crazy, but I thought I should tell them either way, just in case the same thing happened the following year too. But when I was done, the staff member reacted unexpectedly. "Do you believe me?" I asked. "Honestly, I don't believe in ghosts," he said. "But an acquaintance of mine told me last night that they saw someone dressed like Sadako speeding away from the school on a bike. If I'm not wrong, you were dressed as Sadako last night, so I figured it was you. You apparently looked quite upset at the time, so you no doubt had a terribly frightening experience. Setting aside whether ghosts actually exist or not, we have to carefully consider whether we should continue events like this that affect our volunteers in such a negative way. Thank you for telling me," he said. And so, the next year, the test of courage was cancelled, and instead they held a karaoke competition in the gym. Oh, and I asked my son what it was like when he walked past the art room, but he said, "All I heard were the sounds of desks and chairs moving. It wasn't very scary." I had been working my ass off to scare someone, anyone, but seemed it was all for naught. Finally this week, 2 young kids go exploring the now empty apartment above theirs, but when one of them heads back alone, this time he finds something entirely different. Find out what in 4 years ago. Let me tell you about something that happened during the daytime. It definitely wasn't a dream. It happened when I was in the 5th grade. My family lived in an apartment on the 3rd floor at the time, and the family who lived on the 4th floor above us moved out. They were pretty noisy during the night, so I honestly thought we'd gotten pretty lucky. The next day, my younger brother dragged me upstairs. "You've got to see this," he said. "Look, this apartment isn't locked." It was true. Seemed the previous residents forgot to lock it when they left, and the landlord also didn't lock it after checking the apartment either. Of course, all the furniture and such had been removed, so nothing was inside. But being inside an empty apartment with the exact same layout as our own was strangely exciting. We decided to make this our secret hideout, keeping it secret even from our friends. Maybe 3 or so days later, school finished rather early, and I soon realized I'd forgotten my key. Mum was at work, and my brother would be at soccer practice until later that evening. Confused about what to do, I wondered about where I should kill some time. Then, I had a great idea. I should just wait in that empty apartment. There should still be some playing cards and toys in there from when I played there with my brother. I could just play there until my brother got home. And so, I flung the door to that apartment open, like I owned the place. What the hell? The room was fully furnished. Did somebody move in? I thought, and panicking, I shut the door again. However, I was also kind of curious, so I opened the door just a little to have another look, and realized something strange. The layout of the furniture, the atmosphere in the room, it was all somewhat familiar. Suddenly, it all made sense when I went inside and saw all the stickers on the fridge. This was our apartment. Our apartment from 4 or 5 years ago. Why was this apartment on the 4th floor exactly the same as the apartment I lived in 4 years ago? It didn't make any sense, but I wandered around, taking everything in again. Ah, that's the old TV we used to use. Man, my desk looks so small now. And that phone, it was... Suddenly, the phone started ringing. Immediately, I went to answer it, but then I stopped. If this was our apartment from 4 years ago, then I, as a 5th grader, shouldn't exist. I couldn't answer that phone. As I realized that, suddenly I felt scared about being in the wrong space and time, and I ran from the apartment as the phone continued ringing behind me. When my brother got home a few hours later, we went back up to that apartment together, but it was no longer our apartment from 4 years ago. It was just a dim, empty apartment. However, we were no longer able to find the playing cards and toys we hid in the closet. When I think back on that experience now, I still wonder what would have happened if I answered that phone. Maybe it's just a silly fantasy, but perhaps the other side is always ready and waiting with some sweet bait to lure people over from our side. Having said that, now that I'm grown up and preparing for exams, all this study has kind of gotten to me. If that phone rang now, I think I might actually pick it up. A big thank you and shout out to this week's Kami tier members, Ella C, Emerald, and Kenneth Kawamoto. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Kaihan, Bizarre Crimes That Shook Japan Volume 2, out on Amazon right now. And you can check out our merchandise store at kowabana-shop.fourthwall.com. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Tara A. Devlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.